best and the sweet.
Absolutely.
So Carly, what page are they on?
I can't even see.
I'm sorry,
No, absolutely, this is
page 99.
got it.
99, all right.
Oh, let's do 100.
So
On,
let's do something very similar to what we did with police and fire, and that is, if you would start with telling us what you've got big on your plate for '23, and what you're asking for to accomplish that, and how it's gonna be utilized.
All right, I have to switch back and forth.
I'm
I
with
had
you.
surgery on my eyes, so I'm having to switch back and forth so I can actually see. The only thing that's big that we have for '23 is actually, our plan is to go live on our new software. Is it the 1st of November, Justin? November, we purchased some new software in 2019. And there were some setbacks with the software company, with staff and COVID and all that. So now we're just getting to the point where we can actually go live. And that's the plan for November. And so one of the things that we were needing were new scanners for the new software. And so we actually have that. So we're not actually asking for any equipment. So we already have that in the makings. And so we're waiting on it to come. And then we're just about 100% paperless. So one of the things that increased in our budget is the outside services, because we were utilizing the part-time judges. So Judge McKinney would be able to take off. And so we had to increase our outside budget request. And then sorry about that. And so one of the other things too, we also had to increase was the books, dues and subscriptions on that, because we need to keep him up to date on all the new laws and statute, as well as keep the staff up to date too. And I think there was one other.
there are 2 part-time judges.
We have actually 3. We
Three.
have Judge Brinyard, Judge England, and Judge Smith.
Oh,
So
Which
we
Judge
kind of
England?
just rotate them.
The retired Judge England? Okay.
Yes, so we rotate them.
He's probably qualified.
Yes, he is. And then Judge Brinyard, he is still actively working, and also
Right.
Judge Smith.
Brian Bernard.
Yeah, so they sit in when Judge McKinney needs to take off. And let's see, there was one other increase on our office supplies. We had to increase on them because of the cartridges that we're using in the printers. But it probably will decrease over time since we're paperless. But right now, we're still having to print the dockets for the prosecutor to be able to look at. But once we go live with the new software, I'm sure there will be some changes where next year it may decrease even some more. And
Guaranteed. When you say paperless, is that what
paperless,
were you using the paper for before you went paperless?
actually for the case files,
Okay.
citations, all the city ordinance citations,
Uh-huh.
tickets,
Oh,
but
wow.
we're no longer doing that. Everything is within the system.
That is-
And you can actually pull it up, look at it. What we're doing now with all the new arrests that comes through TPD, everything is being scanned in. And I-
Is the police department cooperating with y'all on
Of
risks?
course.
Okay.
God, Steve.
Of course they are. Yeah, because,
Well, they wanted me to get down on him more.
Bring it back up for questions.
no,
Already
no,
threatened.
they're doing everything in their power to serve the writs and the arrest warrants. But they're doing everything. But, there was one other thing, that has come up, you know, with the jail doing the renovations. We're gonna have to look, we're gonna have to take a look at that.
Do
with
what
the-
now about the renovation at the jail? I missed.
With the jail renovations,
Yeah,
we're gonna have to review that, because our inmates are gonna have to be limited. We're gonna have to limit our amount of inmates according, because the felonies will take precedence.
and so the
Over
city inmates, there won't be as much
Mhm.
room.
We
for-
won't have as much room, and so we're gonna
Huh.
have to review, we're gonna have to sit down and review that. And
Wow.
see what we're gonna do
That
about
could be a
that.
big deal for y'all.
Yeah, it will, but, also too, I think there's another route that we'll be able to go. Mhm.
Bless your heart, when did you have surgery?
This one was last Wednesday, this one was August 3rd, so,
Oh, that's all.
yeah, so, no, I'm having a hard time adjusting to the light.
Oh, yeah.
Because now I have 20/20 vision, so I'm just having a hard time
Oh, wow.
adjusting to the light, so I still need readers
Yeah.
to see close up.
Marion, do we all look better?
Yeah, everyone looks great.
Mr. Chairman, if I
She's
could
got her
say,
sunglasses.
Marion is one of our quiet superstars. The council, and frankly, even my office doesn't get a lot of interaction with the municipal court because the court itself has to have its own operations. She does a fantastic job. She's a tireless worker. The only complaint I have on her is that she works too many weekends. She's willing to do anything in that department that anyone else would do. And she has done a fantastic job. I probably don't tell you that enough. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, well, like you say, they need us, so we just have to be there for them. Even if I have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, answer the phone.
Oh, wow.
And she'll do
No,
it.
it's fine, because Jessica's there too to help. Because we're the only ones that have laptops at home to be able to pull up the cases
Yeah.
and actually give them what they need, so, yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Ms. Marion,
yes.
it's only two of you all?
Jessica's my assistant, but
Okay.
I have 13 staff in all.
Okay.
We have 7 magistrates, which Jessica and I are both magistrates as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we have a bailiff, and then we have 1 secretary and 2 office assistants.
Do you still have like an evening magistrate at the police department, or is that
No.
gone away?
We don't, when they, moved back in, they forgot to make a room for us. But
bet
we've
they
been
can
working,
find a room.
well, we've been working on that too, but
Yeah.
also at the same time, when they call and they need to swear to their arrest, and then like on the weekend, on the holidays, Jessica and I will come out and let them swear to their arrest and their tickets on holidays.
Oh, wow.
So there's a time period you gotta swear.
So that's why we come out.
Yeah.
But we are working on, Major and I, we've been kind of working on trying to get something set up where we can have an evening shift magistrate back at headquarters, but we have to have the office
Yeah.
space for it, so. So what we just do now is accommodate them best we can, which is not a problem.
So as Mr. Fail, talked about, what are your needs?
Well, we actually, right now, we have everything that we need. I'm not a big spender, so we utilize, Jessica and I put our heads
Meeting
together.
adjourned.
Guys, y'all heard what she said.
Well, we have everything that we need to accommodate us,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but anytime that I'm in need of something, I can always go to Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
he'll
That's
come
good.
out.
That's good. Yes, ma'am.
So we have everything that we need to accommodate us right now. I'm not saying that we may not need something could pop up and we need it. I'm not saying that that won't happen, but right now, everything that we need to move forward, we have it.
And you have a very conservative budget, recommendation, very conservative.
and we love it. Thank you very much for what you do. That's a lot of hard work for the money.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
I will.
Okay, Ms. Standard, Mayor, who's briefing the public safety escrow for RSA?
I do have a quick handout for the details. And this is really just to kind of answer any questions about the public safety escrow fund that we.
Where's the handout?
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr. Fail.
I thought
Take one
everybody
and
got a
pass.
stack of papers, I didn't know.
And so this is really just to kind of show you the detailed breakdown about where the escrow fund currently sits, and the projection into fiscal 2025. So if there are any questions, one of the proposals in Mayor Maddox's budget is to move $1 million from the RFFI surplus transfer into the escrow fund to just try to help start building up the stockpile for the first conversion year.
So can you walk me through this?
Yes, sir.
Um,
Absolutely.
So 22,
the-
actual 23
And I know this is small
budget.
type, and I apologize for that, but at the very, very top is, the top section is the section for all the revenues that go into this escrow fund. The first one is Elevate. If you recall, within Elevate, there is the 20% set aside for public safety. That was set aside beginning last year, continued into this year for funding of the pay plan that was enacted. So that is a transfer in from Elevate. And then the second line item is going to be the event fee on ticketed events. That was passed this past year. The third line is the rental tax increase on the, mega student apartment developments. The third one is the contract with the University of Alabama for their public safety reimbursement amount. That was a contract that was entered into this past year. The next line is the additional sales tax dollars from the sale of alcohol at the UA athletic events. And that's projected via some information that we have gotten from other SEC schools that are currently selling beer and alcohol at their games. And then the last regularly occurring line is the traffic light camera revenues. This is red light running traffic cameras, and the revenues that we get off of those cameras will go into this fund as well.
Why has that gone up so much?
So the last few years, there has been an interfund loan. We took, I think, when was this? This was 2017 maybe. We used the total amount that was in red light running that we had accumulated over the years to buy a large number of police vehicles. I think we bought like 45 or so to kind of catch up from years prior where we had not bought them appropriately. And so we took all of the red light running money, transferred it into a different fund to be able to buy all of the vehicles. And then we paid back over the years to reimburse the red light camera escrow amount in an interfund loan. So that interfund loan just got paid off this year in fiscal 22. So you will see that total amount of revenue go from the little bit left over after the loan was paid off, that's that $34,000. And then the total amount that we project to get next year completely from red light running is $175,000.
So 175 is typical of what we would expect to bring in on a given year?
Yes, sir, it is typical the last couple of years. It is very far down from what we have gotten in the past. A few years ago, we were receiving $300,000 and $400,000 a year. But that is typical of what we have been seeing as of late.
Do we have any thoughts? Is that because it's so effective that we have fewer speeders or what?
No, sir. AlDOT has not recently, in the last few years, has changed their policy where they will no longer allow interstate or red light running cameras after a road project is complete. So where we have done, say, Lurleen Wallace Boulevard, for example, where we used to have red light running cameras, they will no longer permit us to put those back.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's it seems to be a city by, or a district by district decision by AlDOT, because other cities haven't experienced that do have red light running cameras. We continue to petition them on that. The other alternative for us is to look at more local roads, but so I've asked OCE they're doing a review on that right now. Under the act, I want to say it's either a 2009 or 2010 state act that grants us the authority to do this. There's certain criteria that has to be met. You just can't arbitrarily put up a red light running camera at an intersection. And so they're doing the necessary studies, and so what we may do is on our larger local roads that has X amount of traffic, is just take those lights to where they were and put them at those intersections.
And are the cameras only utilized to determine the running of a red light, or are they utilized for speeding?
The state act only allows us to use them for red light.
Only for the violation of a red light?
And this is a case, I want to say went to the state Supreme Court, and it's been contested, the city's legal authority to do that. It was affirmed by the court for us to be able to do that. Each infraction is reviewed, though, by an APOS certified police officer who then issues the citation.
That is terrible, Lurleen, and that was one of the worst of red light running.
Yeah, there's, the legislature, as you may know, in recent years has really wanted to prohibit municipalities from being able to do this. Certainly we disagree, because I think it's better to have our police officers out there dealing with more violent crimes, drug crimes, juvenile crimes, than having them man an intersection. We also know, though, that red light running, especially the T-bone type accidents, those are the accidents we really want to try to mitigate as much as possible. And I do know they were effective, because as you can imagine, everyone who gets a ticket emails our office. So it's, the worst day of the week is Monday after game day, because then we get all the out-of-towners as well, not just for red light running, by the way, but
Towing.
yeah, towing, the list goes on.
I
and
paid
on.
one when our niece was driving our car. So it came to us,
So when the time comes, I hope our traffic engineers will take a hard look at University Boulevard, because again, we've had several traffic fatalities within rock throwing distance of this building.
And just so the public knows, I think you're aware, the ticket is actually when you cross the intersection on red, you have crossed that white line. You not only have to run it, and you flagrantly have run.
if you're in it and it's yellow at any point, you're okay.
You're okay. And if you're in it, it's yellow and turns red, you're fine. And in most, the officer still practices discretion.
Sure.
Even in that case. So we're going to have to go and identify more local roads that meet the criteria of the Enabling Act.
I expected one time, Chief, when I was behind an 18-wheeler. I couldn't see the light. And maybe that was some discretion somebody used. I appreciated not getting a ticket. This is before I was on the council.
So, all right, so Ms. Standridge, 175-ish is what we kind of expect looking forward,
Yes, sir.
and then we drop down to $1 million.
Yes, sir. So then that last line item is the RFFI surplus transfer that is budgeted or proposed to be budgeted for the fiscal '23 year.
Okay, so that brings us up to $7 million budgeted for '23.
Yes, there's an inflow to
There's-
'23. The outflows budgeted for '23. These two line items are just the costs for the increase for the pay plan. So the analysis that we will do is that we will take a baseline year, which is last year, for police and fire salaries. We will then take the percentage increase that we would have done for the COLA, that we would have done for the STEP, as any other city employee would have gotten. And then whatever the overage is on that, based off of what the new pay plan is requiring us to budget for police and fire, that's the increased amount that will come out of this escrow fund.
Why would the fire salaries and benefits exceed the police salary and benefits?
Their longevity.
Longevity,
They've got
because we
a
have-
lot more senior employees that have been there for so many years that are fully topped out.
That's the 25% at the top of the pile that the chief is talking about. All right, so that brings us up to 7 million. We take out 4.3. There's 2.65 left.
Yes, sir. That's then coupled with the 99,000 that we have, coming from fiscal '22, projected from fiscal '22. And so that gives us a cumulative projected total for fiscal '23 at 2.757.
All right, and then there's an item on finance agenda today that's gonna impact that. You wanna address that in here, or you wanna wait till finance committee for that? The recalculation of determination of longevity of step pay, step raises?
So,
It doesn't
that,
matter, do you wanna,
that does not impact fire and
does not-
police. No, sir. The fire and police pay plan is, as was enacted last year, is fully funded and proposed in the budget. There is no taking down of their step. The step that is, proposed to be, suspended this year is for non-sworn city employees. There are two.
maybe I asked the question wrong. I thought there was a $325,000 adjustment that we were gonna have to make
That's
based
not-
on how we had calculated.
That's not on this finance. That's still within review currently.
Oh, okay,
That-
gotcha. All right, thank you. Mayor, do you want to talk to us at all about the logic and reason behind the $1 million escrow over into the RSA?
Yes, sir, and as I touched on last week, later this fall, we plan on coming to the city council to discuss the proposing of legislation that would begin the city moving towards a conversion from the police and fire pension fund to the retirement systems of Alabama.
Did you say the proposal of legislation?
Yes, sir, we would have to have, it's my understanding, and I would certainly ask our team to correct me if I'm wrong, that we will need enabling legislation to be able to make a conversion.
At the state level?
At the state level. So the way that it's been described to us by Mr. Kelly with RSA is that the process would be an act of the legislature that gives us the authority to negotiate directly with RSA on a conversion from the police and fire pension fund into their system. It's my understanding RSA likes to have that legislation because, as you know, it requires a lot of due diligence. Any conversion at best would take 3 years, could take up to 5 years to make this type of conversion. You certainly have financial issues, legal issues. Some of those legal issues will be litigated. And so it takes time, due diligence, and probably hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of staff time, financial costs, attorney's costs to make a transaction happen. That is why RSA requires that, because they have to know this is a serious endeavor on our part, as well as to, for them to move forward. So I personally believe, and my recommendation to the council is that we need to begin taking those steps. I wanted to go ahead and begin the escrowing of funds to begin that transition period. The $1 million is not by any means going to get you there. It is basically just part of us making a conscious effort, institutionalizing the fact that we're going to have to begin padding this fund for an inevitable conversion if the council moves in that direction in either fiscal '26 or fiscal '27. Today, we think that conversion, based off last year's number that was provided by the actuary, will be somewhere in the range of 8 to 12 million, just depending upon market forces. Now, every year that number changes. That's never a static number. That number changes with as you know better than most in this room, the health of the fund, the payouts in the fund, how the benefits in the fund are determined by the board. But we believe 8 to 12 is a range that's probably realistic. This year, I wouldn't be surprised if that number is not 12 or higher. Next year, depending upon the unfunded liability within the police and fire pension fund, that number may be lower. So if we know 8 to 12 is the number, and we decide to move in that direction, the city is going to need some build-in time in 27, 28, 29, and 30. So the goal would be to identify and assign revenues, but also have a fund that can help us get to that point where you're not taking that 8 to 12 million off in just one fiscal year, that you're buying some lead-in time. A small example, a micro example of that is when several years ago we added 12 new firefighters, but we had a 3-year lead-in period through a grant. So each year we took a third of that cost and just arbitrarily added it to the budget. So by the time the third year rolled around, we already had that cost built into the budget, and it wasn't a shock to the budget system. That's the theory of us putting the $1 million into the police and fire, into the public safety fund. As I mentioned again last week and at the beginning of this monologue, it's not going to, I don't think the $1 million, well, I know the $1 million's not going to be the difference in us getting there. But I like the idea of us beginning to pad that fund as we begin thinking about it. The last thing I'll say, and I met with the Police and Fire Pension Fund board, excuse me. The question was asked, what if we don't do RSA conversion? Will we invest with the Police and Fire Pension Fund? And I said, we will have to. But my feeling is, less than 20% of our public safety employees live within the city of Tuscaloosa. I need to go back with HR and check, but the last time, double-digit numbers live outside the county. Employees today want more the ability of they want the ability to transfer. They want to be able to go to Hoover. They want to, even if they don't ever want to go to Hoover, they want to know they can go to Hoover. They want to know they want to go to Northport, or they want to know they could go to the sheriff's office, or whatever it may be. If we don't have that same benefits, it makes it tough for Chief Rice and Chief Blankley and Chief Sanders and for their teams to go out and recruit. We need to, in my opinion, be at that level. It's being used against us. And I really believe we have to begin making those steps. So that $1 million was that first baby step in that direction. Thank you for allowing me time to explain.
Sure, and I think, and Chief Rice, everybody at this table, and the mayor's recommendation, the people sitting around it, and Chief Smith, is trying to figure out a way to make that work. Okay, that we want that for you, and we're willing to put Hyde on the table to make it so. My concern as we talk through this is if we take $1 million and we put it essentially in escrow at above 8% inflation a year, we're losing that a year. I mean, unless somebody knows something I don't.
Like for investment purposes.
I'm
Yes.
saying the dollars are worth 8% less a year, so at 3 years, we're $250,000 less punching power than we had at this time. And that's a discussion, that's not that's not a pronouncement, that's a discussion.
Where would you,
So-
out of curiosity, where would you invest that?
So what I'm asking us to look at is, I think, is there something we can find with that Hyde that we're willing to put on the table for our police and firemen? Is there something we can find that will do something for them now to reassure them that we're not just talking about making their retirement and their pay better, that we're doing it, but yet we don't allow $1 million, and we assume more and more every year, to atrophy on the vine and be worth less to them, even as the number for RSA continues to grow. I don't know that answer. I have some thoughts, and that's probably initially a much smaller group conversation and discussion, but those are the things that swirl around in my head. Is that what you were gonna ask?
Yeah, I think that would be the, you know, where do you see it being able to take advantage of the current conditions?
So, the first part of the answer is I don't know. The second part is, I think a small group of us should look at, is there something we can do VFR direct to their pockets in a tax-deferred account that boom, that clicks right here that they're serious. And I think the $1 million escrow is, you know, that's serious too. I just, in the inflationary environment we're in, I'm just concerned that we're losing 8.5% a year standing still. Anyway, I would ask us to have those conversations in smaller groups. Okay, anything else either of you wants to know about that portion of the budget proposal?
No, sir, and I think the other thing too, is put this on the council's radar, that if we do determine to go down that step with RSA, it is a three-plus year process. And certainly there will have to be new revenues identified. I mean, I don't think anyone should believe that the revenues currently in the public safety fund can fully fund that transition into RSA if that's the direction we go. So trying to hear more specific growing revenues will, you know, something we're going to be looking at every year to continue to bolster that fund. 41% of our general fund budget is police and fire, and I think that's a good thing. It's a really good thing. So us identifying revenue sources to go into that fund makes a lot of sense to get them some protection when, you know, 10 years from now, I would imagine most of us will not be around this table, but by placing those, hopefully living, Pastor Wilson, but if not, hopefully up there with the Almighty. But we, you know, that they have assurance that they and their beneficiaries will receive that benefit of what they do every single day.
Well, and in addition to that, we'll have to start paying Social Security too, won't we?
We don't have to. Now,
Oh, really?
And that's one of those ways you could phase. There's a lot of ideas, and to the police and fire's credit, their members have come with a lot of ideas. You could phase in the Social Security contribution. You could leave them at a higher contribution level for a certain amount of time to help buffer, because right now, what's their contribution level?
They're at 13.5% for this next upcoming year.
And so if you, for 1 or 2 years, left that at 13% with the city's match, so there's a lot of,
In the RSA number about 7 or 8.
So the RSA employee contribution is 7%. And that was something that I guess that we kind of, with the task force that was put together, we proposed to do was to hold out the employee contribution rate at what they are currently paying in, and maybe walk that down over time, like maybe 1% a year. Yeah, that was one of the ideas that the task force published in their report.
And let me just say this, and I apologize, Mr. Crowder, I'll promise to be quick, is that the conversion of police and fire pension fund in the RSA makes a bond issue look like Mary Poppins. This is complex because you're talking about 40 to 50 years of liability. It's going to require tax attorneys. I mean, as we delved into this, you know, we've really gotten an understanding of just how massive this would be for us. But the only way we can ever get to second base with RSA is they're going to want a commitment because of what it takes to make something like this happen. So, you know, that's going to be the more difficult part of this process. I'm sorry, Mr. Carr, I didn't know.
I was, Carl,
Yes.
when we talk about putting this money in a public safety fund, we're technically, again, is this money in an account separate earmarked, or is it separate somewhere earmarked?
It is, it's reserved separately, completely
Reserved.
earmarked specifically for this.
Can money like that, I mean, I'm assuming, that there are huge restrictions. Can some of that money be put in any type of CD? Can it be put in any type of investment that's a safe
So
investment to try to combat
the
part of
city
this?
has a codified investment policy that only allows us in very conservative investment criteria.
Is it all fixed income?
Which
It's
would-
all fixed income. It's all U.S. Treasury. But I would imagine that we
Something.
could.
But that might cut into some of your inflation problems.
And I will say so normally our investment process within the finance department is that we will take a lot of our cash reserves and we do invest as is fiscally responsible for staff time allotted to be able to handle the ins and the outflows and being able to track those appropriately. The last few years, that has not been financially advantageous for us at all. We have had a couple of proposals in the last 6 months from banks that it is becoming a little bit more financially advantageous for us, and we are beginning to explore those.
And it might be worth paying some type of fee to somebody to do it, maybe not basing it on, I don't know, most of the fees are based on return. You know, a lot of times with some minimum, but it might be worth looking at, because I mean, you think about if that number, you know, 3 or 4 years, what is $8 million? Well, 10% of that's 800,000, so if you cut that in half at 5%, it's $400,000. At least you're growing something. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it could be more than that. Well, that could be substantial money to help us.
Have we ever taken a particular protected fund, perpetual fund like this, and invested those dollars and then returned, besides bond issues, have we ever taken those dollars and returned it back?
So, no, sir, normally what we will do is if we have restricted cash set asides and we do invest, and in prior years when we have invested those, that interest income has just kind of gone into the regular interest income that the city receives within our general fund or our water and sewer, depending on where the cash sits.
But you could change that.
Absolutely,
council could change that.
we can set that aside just by budget ordinance, that's not a problem. But no, sir, we've never done it to where we've tracked specifically cash inflows off of cash reserves and then set that aside with those cash reserves.
Because if you did that, then every year it would, I mean, well, if you invested the proceeds, then you're gonna have more money, because you're gonna be 8.4, right, the next, or whatever that number is.
What are CDs? I assume CDs and.
I'm sorry, I've not kept
Well,
up with that one.
They're more
They're
attractive
than they
now.
were.
Yeah.
They're
Probably
still
4%,
3%, maybe.
3.5,
That
4.
obviously dependent
You gotta
on,
put a period
Length
of
of
time, a
time.
longer period of time.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
you might-
that's still a quarter of a
But
million.
if the Fed keeps raising rates, you're probably gonna have 5% CDs soon. I would think at least.
Well, and that's a timing game, like, do you do it now, do you hold it and wait to see if it does go up? Because if you put it in a CD that's any length of time where you get a decent return, then you've locked it.
What do they
Then you've
normally
locked
like it for, 6 months?
it. You could do anything.
you can do
it
6
for
months, a year,
several
3
years.
years, 5 years.
But
Take a
I
pick.
mean, you also can, I think, do some instruments that would allow you to get a pretty good market rate. It's pretty liquid too, that's a lot better than, I mean, 'cause to me, anything better than zero is better than what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure,
I
sure.
mean, but you wouldn't wanna probably lock it up. Unless interest rates went crazy, you might wanna lock it up at, 5 to 10, somewhere in that range if it makes sense, but I don't know, I think that's something we should look at. And I
And
know y'all are, but I'm just saying
sure.
because I think that probably needs to be looked at pretty heavily.
Well, our goal was to present the RSA issue in October. Do we want to look at that as part of the issue as well?
I would
that be
think so,
appropriate?
Mr. Busby.
I'm not sure I understand our goal was to present the RSA.
We want
plan.
to start the discussion with the finance committee on asking for legislation regarding a potential conversion to RSA. Our goal was to bring that to finance committee sometime in October to begin the discussion, not the approval, the discussion. Would you want how we looking at this 1 million as part of that discussion in October?
I would.
Sure.
Because I mean, the legislation is a piece of it, but it's not the long pole in the tent, right? It's the loot. So, I think in smaller groups, this is a large forum. I think for today, we highlighted that deterioration of $1 million. Now let's start maybe in smaller groups to talk about how we can counter or avoid that. And, I want the two chiefs back there, I mean, if there's no other takeaway from this, it's that it's dead serious in terms of being proposed and dead serious in terms of being received. The question is, how do we do it smartest? All right, any other issues on?
Yeah, where's the 250,000 that was talked about from football?
So that's the additional sales from alcohol at the UA games. The 250,000 is not, that's not a reasonable projection. That 75,000 is really, when we look at LSU, when we look at Tennessee, when we look at Texas, really that's gonna be what we can project to
No,
get.
I thought.
Our agreement with the university.
Oh,
It's-
sorry, yeah,
If
that-
it was later, it's another.
that starts in fiscal '24.
Yeah.
So if you will look on the easiest way to see it is about midway through, it says account needed on the very left-hand side,
I thought it started in 23, 24.
per the contractual agreement, yes, sir.
It's still 5 years, so it'll run to 28, which will give us 5 fiscal years, 24,
Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, that 250,000 goes in every year.
Good question,
Okay.
Kip. Okay, anything else before we take a break? We'll be back in here at 10:45. Take a break. Thank you.